few series invite speculation as much as Super Smash Bros. Seeing all these characters from all sorts of worlds come together under one banner practically begs the question of who else could stand alongside them. By its very nature, it encourages people to start wondering how those characters would play. They discuss those ideas with others, creating videos about them, making it a cornerstone of their YouTube channel, eventually hitting a point where I talk about the game so much that I don't really play it anymore. Throughout all this speculation, people inevitably have their favorites. Characters that, were they added to the game, would leave them completely satisfied. Whoever comes afterwards is irrelevant. I know some have already gotten theirs. Banjo, Joker, someone out there wanted Piranha Plant. While others are still dreaming of a game where the likes of Geno, Dante, Phoenix Wright, Crash, and many more make their debut. But in my case, my character, the one I've wanted since Smash 64, is Rayman. I adore this character. Rayman was the video game mascot of my childhood. Well, apart from Kerrigan, but the sequel ruined her, so Rayman it is. Where others were dashing through Green Hill Zone or jumping through the Mushroom Kingdom, I was delighted to explore the Glade Dreams and take part in the absolute acid trip that these games can bring about. He's not quite on the same level as other major mascots, but when talking about the great platformers of history, his name will come up from time to time. And yet, I so often see Rayman overlooked when it comes to Smash Bros. Which honestly, I get it. On a first impression, there's not much he brings to the table. He punches and he kicks and he can hover, how original. But upon digging deeper, this character can bring so much more to the table. He has potential that isn't obvious on the surface. So today, I'd like to educate the masses on that potential, and hopefully shed some light on why so many love this character as much as I do. To briefly define the goal of this video, this is not prediction-styled content around some inevitable Smash sequel. I rarely ever do that stuff, and even if I did, I've been burned by this too much to get my hopes up. Nor is it a call to arms to bombard Sakurai on Twitter with requests for Rayman for a third Fighter's Pass, because that would be rude and stupid. Morality aside, repeatedly pestering people is one of the quickest ways to ensure something doesn't happen. No. I am making this video simply because I want to share my love for this character. Rayman, both his series and himself, deserves a better hand than what was dealt to him. And while I can't do anything to fix that, I can at least celebrate him by brainstorming how he could appear in Smash Bros. But before I get into his Smash design, I want to establish some things about Rayman. Specifically, that there is very little established about this series. There's a reason Rayman lives in the Glade Dreams. These games don't make a lot of sense, to a point that a prevailing theory is that each Rayman game is just a different dream of the god of these worlds, making up new lore as he goes each time. Where other franchises generally have a solid groundwork they build off of, for example, one generally knows what to expect from a Mario game. Good design, tight platforming, very light story, but overall high quality. Rayman is all over the place. This is the original installment, a charming little 2D platformer that just screams childlike whimsy. This is a level made entirely of instruments. The villain's name is Mr. Dark. Everything is alive like an old cartoon. It's adorable. It's also the hardest 2D platformer I have ever played, by a very wide margin. So one might expect a sequel to build on those elements. More colors, more cartoony, more bullshit platforming. Nope. 2 is dark, gritty, genuinely terrifying at times. This spider still makes me uncomfortable. But it's also stupidly easy. And then 3 is a parody of a video game?
Fuck off, Barry! Zelda did you get?
Loud over-the-top effects, pointless yet fun combo systems. It starts with an intentionally cliché build-up to its story on ultimate evil that's seeking world destruction, only for that evil to be eaten by Rayman's friend, and the next several hours revolve around visiting different doctors to try and surgically remove it. A surgery that looks like this. I may despise the rabbits for what they did to Rayman and his series, but looking back, I'm not surprised they came from here. If it isn't clear, the core of the Rayman series is that it does whatever the hell it feels like. What's this game's plot? Let's pull out the game's manual and find out. Rayman needs a mount to cross an area? Clearly, a mosquito vacuum is the logical pick. No, sorry, this is lava that needs to be crossed, and everyone knows that plums can withstand temperatures of up to 3,000 degrees. God, these rabbits are annoying. With foes like these, they leave Rayman only one option: disco! I am fully convinced that drugs were involved with most, if not all, of the design process behind these games. What is Rayman? Nobody knows. What kind of music should his games have? All of it. How should he be marketed? Oh no. Oh no. Okay, that's actually pretty good. I could go on like this for hours, from bumper car shoes to ducks versus luchadors, but I think the picture is clear. And yet, despite all this conflicting absurdity, these games still manage to be beautiful. The environments are gorgeous, the music is phenomenal. These games are funny, scary, they're endlessly creative. They have so much heart that allows all these disparate elements to come together into a cohesive package. And I think that's why I love the character so much. He's so expressively bizarre that everything feels normal to him. He fits in wherever he goes, which allows his adventures to be all the crazier. That insanity and creativity is what I want to bring into Smash Bros. Which immediately leads into a massive roadblock, because I want to translate the Rayman series into Smash Bros. But Rayman gameplay means something completely different depending on the installment. A Rayman moveset designed to embody the gameplay of Legends and Origins would be very aggressive, a rushdown character. That's a very fast-paced game that relies on forward momentum. But one based on 2 and 3 would be a floaty zoner, and if I wanted to steer towards 2, he'd have a ton of movement options, while 3 would rely more on power-ups. Any influence from the Rabbids games would lead to Wario levels of absurdity and jankiness, and a Rayman 1 moveset probably wouldn't be very fun. The problem here is obvious. These potential playstyles outright contradict each other. The more that is committed to one will inevitably leave another behind. So, I'm going to put forward that the best way to translate the Rayman series into Smash Bros. Is to forego gameplay entirely and focus more on embodying the dreamlike wackiness of these games. He can still have references to those other installments, but his kit will be designed to be more of a jack-of-all-trades to suit his flexible appearances, while doubling down on the fact that this character is weird. With that established, I want to move on to Rayman's core mechanic in Smash Bros. Rayman is limbless, obviously. But not only is he limbless, every part of his body has been shown to be able to separate from the rest, sometimes acting independently. And that is exactly how he works in Smash Bros. Here's what I mean. This is Rayman's forward smash, directly pulled from Rayman Legends, but also referencing his main attack in most of his games. Unlike Legends though, where Rayman can quickly cancel this animation and his hand will warp back to him, Rayman himself can start acting just as quickly, but his hand lingers for a bit. This forward smash has a lengthy animation that the hand is stuck in, after which it has to travel back to Rayman before he can use it again. And in this state, it has a hurt box, marked by a glowing effect around the hand, meaning, similarly to a Luma, it can be knocked away, not adding to Rayman's percent, but flying no further the higher it is at, and taking a chunk of Rayman's power with it until he gets it back. Basically, Rayman is a resource character, with his limbs being his resource. Throughout a match, everything he's capable of doing will change depending on the limbs he has with him. If his feet are busy kicking, he can't kick more. He can't punch with hands that were knocked to the other side of the stage. Again, the Luma is a pretty obvious comparison to make here, but physics-wise they act more like a boomerang. They aren't affected by gravity, cannot pass through solid surfaces, and they can't be KO'd. So no matter where or how far they are launched, they will always course correct and try to head directly back to Rayman, however long that may take. In other words, if an opponent can plant themselves between Rayman and some of his limbs, continuously knocking them away, or better yet, get them somewhere where they can't easily get back to him, they can severely limit his options as half of his strong moves are unable to rejoin his body. Now, this is not a feature of any of Rayman's games. With a few unimportant exceptions, he's always got his limbs with him, so it may seem odd to let this embody the entire character. But the point isn't the limbs themselves, it's the chaos they would enable, how they highlight what is unique about him. Having a constantly shifting moveset like this that opponents can affect is something no other character comes close to having. There may be others with outside elements that opponents can focus down, but those are simple to deal with. One must simply keep an Ice Climber or Luma away from their driver. Here, though, a multitude of questions would constantly be thrown at both Rayman and his opponent. Do I have enough limbs with me to risk throwing away more? Should my opponent try to spike my foot underneath the stage, or take advantage of the fact that I can't run very fast? There may be situations where I would want to be missing certain limbs. The very fact that these are questions players could be asking themselves is ridiculous, and questions like that would need to be asked constantly. Playing Rayman should be a chaotic mess, where his game plan would need to quickly adapt to whatever absurd situation he ends up in, which is exactly what these limbs would allow for. But that all sounds very complicated, a micro-intensive character, which is something I want to veer away from somewhat. While Rayman games can have some impressively difficult segments, I'd argue he should have a high skill ceiling, as the first game makes Dark Souls look easy. For the most part, these games are also easy to pick up and play, at least to start, and I don't want to lose that either. Thankfully, he has a very basic baseline moveset, with almost everything pulled from Rayman Legends because, well, it fits. This is his jab combo, all of his tilts, his smash attacks, dash attack, directional aerials, with a neutral air of all of his limbs orbiting around his body. That's default Rayman. Done. Easy. Now, not all of these moves dismember him. He'll have a few more in his specials, but in terms of normals, only 5 launch his limbs to a point that they separate from his body. His forward and up smash, which launch his hands, and his up, back, and forward air, which launch his feet. Everything else isn't thrown with enough force to exit orbit around Rayman's body, so he remains a solid character, still able to be grabbed and comboed like the rest. That is the base moveset, but again, this is a resource character. Many of these moves rely on a limb that he may not have with him. This is where I want accessibility to come into play. I don't want to outright lock away moves if he doesn't have a certain limb. I just want to lock out power. So he should always still attack in the direction the player is expecting if they input a move. For example, if he doesn't have his hands for his forward tilt, he will do a much weaker but faster kick instead. And if somehow his legs are gone too and he tries the same move, he launches his head forward like the Smash Flash 2 design, while slowly bouncing around like Larry the Cucumber to walk. Satisfying casual players by always having their button presses amount to something, and the fact that a fighting torso is just amusing. But for competitive play, for players that can make sense of the chaos, all of these moves have a purpose. The moves that dismember him are his strongest, still on the weak side when compared to the kill moves of other fighters, but if any of his normals are sending an opponent to the blast zone, it's one of these. The moves that don't dismember him are more generalized moves, launching tools, a few spacing options, and the fastest and safest stall and fall in the game. This stuff won't kill usually, but it tacks on percent. Similar to the role that replacement moves have, the moves that take the place of a missing limb, but these are specialized tools that gel with the limbs he still has. Base Rayman's moveset has very little combo synergy, but when he has no hands, the kicks that replace those moves will send fighters upward, where a strong aerial might finish them off. On the flip side, when he has no legs, his new aerial punches will create weak spikes or trip opponents at low percents, to keep fighters grounded where his forward smash can kill them. Any moves that use all of his limbs are slow multi-hits that aren't very reliable, opponents would fall out of them fairly easily, but they get faster and less multi-hitty the fewer limbs he has, becoming incredible combo moves if he only has one limb with him. Lastly, the moves he's left with when he has no limbs are weak trips, pokes, and get-off-me tools with set knockback, for the purpose of buying him time for his limbs to come back to him, or a suicidal gimp if all else fails. This all would make Rayman a very unique resource character, as losing his resource isn't necessarily a bad thing. He's definitely hindered, but there are plenty of situations where a player would want those faster, weaker combo moves. There would be a potential game plan for whatever state Rayman is in. It's just a matter of how good the player is at adapting on the fly, which is very important for the character. Now, this would require quite a few unique variations on his attacks, depending on what limbs are around. But thanks to his dismembered status, he'd be the easiest character to do that with. There's just not much to animate. It'd be relatively simple to repurpose and tweak his own moves, as well as the animation skeletons of other fighters to make this possible. Almost his entire limbless moveset could use Piranha Plant as a baseline, and there's dozens upon dozens of kicks and punches to repurpose across the rest of the roster. And again, the constant variation would add so much to the chaotic wackiness that I want from Rayman. Note that while I'm using Rayman Legends as the base here, I don't want him to move and attack as quickly as he does in Legends. The idea here is that Rayman trends towards a generalist sort of playstyle, though obviously a very bizarre one. Only having access to parts of what a jack of all trades can do at any time depending on the state he's in. And even then he's lackluster compared to the other generalist characters. His specials will make up for that. So I'd want his movements to be slower across the board to steer away from being too aggressive or evasive. That covers his normals, which I feel build a solid groundwork for his main gimmick that I now want to use to enable his specials. First is his neutral special, which is the Magic Fist ability, something that appears in some way in most Rayman games, but using its Rayman 2 interpretation primarily. Though in this case it could also be a magic kick or magical spit, I suppose. This is an odd projectile. Rayman can charge and throw them for some mediocre chip damage, able to jump and slowly move as he charges, but uncharged, they don't deal any damage at all. 3 of these little buggers can be active at a time, with any additional thrown canceling out the oldest one. They are thrown out almost instantly, indefinitely bouncing off of any surface, and I do mean any. The stage, other projectiles, other magic fists, a shield, an opponent, Rayman himself, they will even bounce off the blast zone. The only things they don't bounce off of are Rayman's dismembered limbs, because in Smash Bros., when this magic collides with a dismembered limb, that limb will instantly charge back to Rayman's body, gaining light super armor, phasing through solid objects, and dealing damage to anything that gets in its way. The further the limb was from Rayman, the faster it will whip back to him, and the more damage it will deal. Which is a massive creative liberty. Nothing like this has appeared in the Rayman series, but it's a liberty I am happy to take, for how high it would raise Rayman's skill ceiling while still having an easy-to-use form of the attack for casual play, and most importantly, the absurdity it would bring to Smash Bros. This gives Rayman an option to try and regain his resource, in a way that could turn that limb into a satisfying combo or kill move. It's why his kit encourages him to have a few limbs missing, because when one of these limbs collides with a magic fist, it becomes one of the best attacks in the entire game, turning disadvantage into danger on both sides in an instant, making Rayman into a borderline broken character, except these moments are almost impossible to set up, because the direction that the magic bounces is completely random. It has to be. Otherwise Rayman would become a cerebral character, setting up traps and luring opponents into them, which is the last thing he should be. Active planning should not be going into this character. Rayman should not control the battlefield. In fact, this works better when he is not in control. And really, that's the whole point of what I'm going for here. Where most other fighters are proactive with their game plans, they know what they want to do going into a match, Rayman is reactive. He is only truly impressive if his player is creative and adaptable, to be able to toss out some limbs and magic fists and just see what happens. To always keep an eye out for an opportunity to literally connect the dots in a way that could result in a devastating attack. For example, if a magic fist is approaching behind a shielding opponent, a point-blank forward smash will instantly return that limb and instantly break the shield. It's why his stall and fall is so fast, to change the trajectory of incoming limbs. Going back to the easy to pick up, hard to master idea, anyone can pick him up and spam this ability to hope for the best, but once adapted to, a Rayman main could pull off some impressive tricks. Plus, it'd add a lot of flash and color to his moveset with the constant moving lights, which I'd argue is important. Building off of that concept, I want to move on to his down special. This is based on his death animation in Rayman Legends. He will inflate like a balloon, then pop, firing his hands and feet in opposite directions. Players would be able to rotate his body while he inflates, allowing them to aim where they want their limbs to go, creating a very dangerous set of bouncing projectiles that get particularly insane in enclosed stages, at the obvious cost of leaving him as just a torso and head. Basically a smash attack that fires in 4 directions. Something a casual player could easily spam over and over again, the Pikachu Thunder of Rayman's kit, with clear weaknesses that make it fair for competitive play, as it does leave him vulnerable for a time and limbless after that. Unless, of course, some magic fists were thrown around first. Now, getting a useful setup with these magic fists requires a bit of luck, as the randomization won't always be in Rayman's favor. But thankfully, Rayman has his hair to buy some time for his luck to turn around. This is his up special, no brainer there. But unlike most up specials, it does not give him any upwards momentum whatsoever. Instead, it's a toggle, like Rob's up special, activating his propeller hair to slow his descent. This can buy him some time to throw out some magic fists, stall to space out an attack, wait for a magic fist to get into position, or just get some breathing room so his limbs can return naturally. This is actually one of the few things that embodies all of his games. Rayman platformers are much easier to go at one's own pace because his hair helps him avoid hard committing to his jumps. That's not to say that Rayman platforming is easy. Boy, can it not be easy. It just makes his platforming a little more controlled. Which is how I want it to work in Smash Bros., allowing Rayman to exert some control over the flow of the match at a hefty cost to his vertical recovery. This move has another function, as a propeller can't slow his descent if Rayman is already on the ground. Here, it spins to create a windbox upwards as long as the button is held, firing a magic fist straight up when it is activated. This allows Rayman to try for some aerial setups with the magic fists, as well as giving another stalling tool to buy him some time to get his limbs back. To double down, I do want vertical recovery to be something that Rayman struggles with, but not to a point that he's just dead if he's below the stage. If all else fails, he does have a Hail Mary ability to get back to safety with his side special. Rayman will take his torso and give it a heavy kick, punch, or headbutt, controlling similarly to the projectile redirection of the Ori games, sending it rocketing anywhere he pleases with his limbs trailing behind a second later. This is a dangerous projectile, dealing very heavy damage, but it's arguably more dangerous to Rayman. If it hits or is hit by an opponent, it'll bounce off of them, with Rayman's limbs course-correcting to follow it, and until those limbs catch up to the body, he has no control. He can't grab ledges as his hands aren't with his body, he can't affect his trajectory in any way, he's just hoping to make it back to safety because this was his only option. While there is no direct reference to be found here, apart from I guess a very light nod to Kung Fu, I love this move because it embodies the absurdity and goofiness of Rayman's series. Depending on how an opponent reacts to Rayman's torso flying at them, they could just hit it and launch it directly into the blast zone. They could purposefully get hit by it, which will hurt, but it'll bounce away again into the blast zone. They could dodge it and follow up by launching all of Rayman's limbs away, which if done right could leave him completely helpless as his torso slowly rolls off the other side of the stage and again into the blast zone. I love this idea so much. It's stupid, it's slapstick, it's far more harmful to Rayman than it is helpful, and yet there are still situations where it could be extremely powerful. At a certain point, it is his only recovery option, he might as well throw it out. Any active magic fists could give him control back earlier than expected, and if aimed properly mid-combat so the torso bounces directly back to the rest of Rayman, he'd regain control instantly. It's a tool that in the right hands could lead to some jaw-dropping plays, and all while still being so easy to use. It's just pick a direction, Rayman kicks himself in that direction. There's so much potential while still being inherently simple, fun, and funny on a casual level. Now, I wouldn't want this to be his only recovery option, At a certain point under the stage, yes, this is his only chance of getting back, but I do want to give him a tether. It'd be the shortest tether, it won't save him often like some of the others do. He just shouldn't be punished for being an inch below the stage. I want this to be based on the Rayman 2 Lum Swing. I personally like the Lockjaw more, but I feel the Lum Swing fits his aesthetic better. The Rayman 2 wispy effects really sell the dreamlike theme of the Rayman games. Plus, it allows for easy color coding between this, his magic fists, and the effects on dismembered limbs, to let multiple Raymans know which moves and limbs are theirs. As a side note of this tether grab, I want him to have terrible throws, the worst in the game. Rayman is not physically strong. His power comes from the momentum of launching his limbs forward. This would actually be a fun time to embrace more goofiness, as Rayman tries to carry out his throws but fails as the weight of the fighters he's throwing becomes too much for his limbs to support, disconnecting those limbs in the process. This could be helpful in certain circumstances. Maybe there's combos that could result from this at weird percentages. It immediately loses his hands to set up for a kick that leads to a forward air, I don't know. Overall, he's a character that wants to pummel and grab release his opponents, which allows for another weakness to balance a character that can be very powerful when mastered. That about wraps things up here, so I'd like to take a moment to recap. Rayman is a character that can do a bit of everything, just not all at once. He's got tools to try and rush down his opponents, a zoning tool, a few movement options, but any option feels lackluster or outright dangerous to himself when compared to other characters. And he has some glaring weaknesses. His grab game is awful, his recovery risky, and he's on the lighter side of the roster. But the true power of Rayman comes from what he is. This character is a creativity magnet. He is a literal living dream. Limbs and magical energy balls are constantly sent flying in a kaleidoscope of color, which players can look to and try to discern some kind of pattern that they can take advantage of, or just throw caution to the wind, embrace the chaos and hope for the best. Both options can result in victory, be it a discovered combo or simply because both players lost track of a foot stuck underneath the stage that returned with an absolute vengeance when a magic fist finally found it. With this moveset, he has the potential to be one of the wackiest characters in Smash Bros., and this would be shown no better than in his final smash. I want this to be utter madness, a love letter to the Rayman series, where whatever stage Rayman is on crosses into the Glade Dreams and insanity ensues. Loosely based off of the Bubble Dreamer intro of Rayman Legends, bubbles and portals appear across the stage, causing players to fall asleep if they come in contact with them, and various things from Rayman's history will pop out of them and cause something. I want this to be completely randomized, with say 10 things that can happen but only 2 or 3 ever occur in a single final smash. Maybe Murphy appears and tries to drag one of Rayman's foes across the screen. Much as I dislike them, the rabbits should appear here in some way, so perhaps a rabbit submarine flies through one of the bubbles and crashes into the stage, spawning a few rabbits to attack anything nearby. Some of these things could be outright detrimental to Rayman. Those rabbits will also attack him, which is fitting, along with the gun-toting Mario that sometimes hangs out with them, which would arguably be more fitting. Perhaps Dark Rayman could appear and start to follow Rayman's every move. His attacks would damage Rayman's foes, acting as a pseudo-ice climber to the original, but if he ends up touching Rayman, just like in his games, it's instant death. Whatever ends up happening, be it plums or pirates, hoodlums or heroes, happens simultaneously, completely upending the stage in a way that could absolutely decimate Rayman's foes, or end up backfiring and losing him a stock, or just do absolutely nothing. It's Rayman. As far as he is concerned, anything goes. That completes his entire moveset. But there is one more thing I want to mention. Rayman is such an intensely expressive character. He doesn't just throw a punch, he puts every non-existent muscle that he has into that attack, while scrunching up his face to make sure that punch lands exactly where he wants. If he takes a hit, he doesn't just flinch in pain, he convulses as his eyes go white, his entire body will squish into the direction he was attacked, as his head swells to ridiculous proportions. Every attack comes with a ridiculous visual and audio effect. Rayman himself cheers with every victory and screams through every defeat. This is a character who thrives when his design is pushed past conventional limitations, because he doesn't have any. More than anything, that's what I want to see brought into Smash Bros. The absurd, colorful, beautiful randomness this series and character embody that has consistently brought me so much joy. Thank you all for watching. This has been a remake of an old video I made a while back. I've been redoing all of my content recently to get a standardized level of quality on the channel and take a healthier, more professional approach to the website. And this was a remake I was very excited to make. Rayman is obviously near and dear to my heart. Few characters in media can rival how much he's affected my preferences, and it was my absolute pleasure to do the character proper justice here. It's not that the old video was bad, but it was much more a surface level paint by numbers, this move does this attack sort of deal. And Rayman is so much more than that. There's a feel to this series that I was delighted to dive into. And after devoting the proper amount of time to him, I really feel that he has potential. I don't know if the Switch could handle this many objects flying across the screen at once, and I'm certain it would need some tweaks before implementation, but I'm happy to plant my flag and argue that he functions in principle. Now, this video in particular is one that I'm very interested to hear feedback on, both in terms of how my moveset is received, as well as hearing what other Dream characters people have that missed the boat for Smash Ultimate. So in the interest of pushing the engagement of this video, and reminiscing over those Dream newcomers, how do you all feel about Rayman in Smash Bros? Would he be a dream come true or a nightmare in the making? Would he function the way I have him? Or would some of you prefer a different take? And how about other Dream characters? Who does my audience desperately want in this series? Or did you all already get them, you lucky bastards? And lastly, just for my own curiosity, was I able to get any of you interested in trying this series out yourselves? I'd highly recommend it. 3 is again my favorite, but 2 is the more popular overall, and I can take off these heavy nostalgia goggles and still call Legends an absolute masterpiece. If I piqued any of your interests, please let me know in the comments below. If you all enjoy my brainstorming sessions, please consider liking, subscribing, and clicking that notification bell. For any that really liked it, consider joining the channel. I don't run ads on my videos as they are annoying and mess with the flow of my content, so any support there would be quite helpful in making these things more often. Otherwise, thank you all for watching, and I will see you all soon with another video. Goodbye.